Hey, welcome to Backyard Bows. I'm Brandon, and if you've been following mostly on Instagram, you've seen that we got to go down to a hog hunt in Texas, and man, did we get a ton of information. We'll go over the bows and the setups that we used. We'll go over all the broadheads that were tested, and there was 11 of us down there, so we tested a bunch of broadheads. We have some good insight on fixed blades versus mechanicals, all of those general questions that a lot of you ask. And if you're new to hunting and you're trying to figure out what you want to use, I think this is a great video to kind of decipher and navigate your way through all of the different broadheads and stuff out there. We'll give you a little bit of arrow insight. And then we also got to talk to one of the guys down there. I got to meet him for the first time. He was a dog tracker for deer, and he had some really good insight and feedback. So most of us, the average hunter, we shoot 2 arrows, let's say a year, 2 broadheads, 2 arrows, maybe out of 1 bow. That's very little insight on the broad spectrum of things. But when you get a dog tracker in the room and you can really pick his brain about what he sees, what was used, what was recovered, the entry, exit wounds, blood trails, all of that, man, you really start to form a good idea of what's best. So 3 reasons why I like hogs. First reason is it's cheap. If you want to test a lot of different gear, a lot of different broadheads, and really get out there and shoot a whole bunch of different critters, hogs is an awesome way to do it. Let's talk a little bit about the place we're at a place called JP's Bow Hunting Ranch down in Texas. Fenced in, 300-400 acres. I don't remember what it was. They probably have a herd of maybe 400 hogs in there. And the local farmers will trap them, dump them off there. They get a little kickback to repair the damages from the hogs. And then the business owner, JP or Keith, he'll make a little bit of lucrative business out of, you know, getting hunters down there and killing these hogs. And then the hunters, we get to go do something fun and enjoy ourselves. And in my case, test a whole bunch of different gear. So bow hunting only though. That's the one thing I really love about this ranch. It's like $500 for a weekend. You get maximum of 2 hogs, but then every hog after that's just like an extra $100. So I killed as many hogs as I possibly could. The only thing that held me back, I think, is in the beginning, they wrap your arrows with an ID, kind of a little serial number, so they know who's shooting what and who's drawing blood and who to charge what, which I understand, but they only let you go into the field with 3 or 4 arrows. So I ran out of arrows the second night, which we'll talk about in a second. The second reason I love it is because they're tough as shit. Okay, they got some thick skin. They have a really thick shoulder plate. And then the big hogs, they have an entire kind of like armor going down the side of their rib cage. So if you want to test some penetration, the durability of a broadhead, a hog, I promise you, is the way to do it, okay? Which probably is going to simulate some of that bigger game. But then also, in my theory, anything that is successful on a hog is going to be successful on a whitetail. The third reason I love it is for your own personal kind of test. Hogs, you got to place good shots on. Okay, the first day that we were down there, everything's real nice and easy. Nobody had been down there for 2 days. The hogs coming up, they're feeding on the corn and the feeders. Everything's real nonchalant, pretty easy. That second night, after we've been stirring through there, tracking hogs, you know, getting everything riled up with these buggies running through, they're kind of more on edge. Their senses are a lot more keen. They're a lot more sketched out. They're moving the entire time. It really takes some good focus and for you to place that good shot, which I love too, just for a personal challenge. The group of guys that went down there was awesome. I think we almost got 30 hogs by the end of it. I was able to take 2 different bows. I took the Hoyt Alpha 30, which I had. This is that 80-pound option. I have this thing jacked down to, I think, 73. So this thing is honestly, when I was setting this thing up, the first thought I had was this thing is a pig sticker. You know, I had to take this thing with me. Shooting this arrow that I had set up, it's almost at like 310 feet per second or something. This thing is an absolute killer. And then I also got the privilege right before I left, this new form from Prime came in. And if you have not even seen this online, this is such a unique, cool bow. I'm so excited for you guys to see the review on this and then also get to kind of hear some of my feedback of actually putting this thing in the field down there in Texas. Really cool bow from Prime. Something very intriguing. In Prime fashion, just like when you saw those dual cams when they first came out with them, you're like, what is that? The half carbon, half aluminum riser. It's just an eye catcher. Really cool benefits to it. I love the whole thing, and we'll go in more depth about it in the review, but you're gonna have to watch that. So for the arrows, I ran 2 arrows. I ran some RIP TKOs, which I've known for a long time. These things, they will break on you. You want to get a nice pass through with these arrows. If not, you hit something hard, there's a good chance that these things are going to break. Ton of these were broken down there. Okay, the other arrows I ran were the new match grade FMJs. Now I always love FMJs. You guys know me. I'm a Full Metal Jacket fan. They don't tend to break as much, but there's something that will happen with the FMJs that I just want to mention, and I love FMJs, but they will slightly bend on you. Okay, so unless you're constantly, every time you shoot an FMJ in the field, I'd run it through a balancer, because there might be a slight bend that's to the naked eye, you can't see it, but once you put it on there, it'll be noticeable. But that's something about that aluminum jacket, that's what's gonna, slightly have a bend to it and torque to it. But these things definitely don't break as much, and they didn't down there. We had some guys running some Black Eagles, and everything held up pretty good. I think the Rip TKOs were the ones that were breaking the most. Broadheads. Now, we used a wide range of broadheads. We used broadheads, fixed blade, we used mechanical, we used cheap ones, expensive ones. We kind of used the whole full spectrum and shot as much as we can. In this broadhead talk right now, we'll give you some pros and cons of fixed blade versus mechanical. We'll also give you the pros and cons of shot placement. And I think a lot of this insight, combined with this new information from this tracker, I think it's just good information to have. So again, if you're new, this is the part of the film that I think is the most intriguing. So first night up, I was rocking, I think, a Beast broadhead. Okay, so we went with the mechanicals right from the beginning. The Beast broadhead held up pretty good. It did have some nicks and stuff into the blades, which you cannot change out at the moment. I think the Bowmars are working on something, ability to maybe give you some replaceable blades, but they did get beat up pretty good. And that's gonna go across the board. All of the mechanical broadheads, except the Severs, they got beat up pretty good, okay? And we tested a ton. Okay, I think the ones that did the best were probably the Grim Reapers and the Severs. Okay, those are the ones that came out the cleanest. One of them even had like a little bit of a bad shot, bent the Grim Reaper a little bit, but it still made a pass through. Next, I would say the Schwackers. Now, I love Schwackers. You guys know I do, but man, did those pigs eat those Schwackers alive. A lot of bends to the blades, slight bends, nothing crazy, but the Schwackers, obviously, they get some good penetration, but man, did they come out a little bit funny on the other side. The Mega Meats. Now, the Mega Meats almost stopped every time. I don't think anybody got a full pass through. A lot of the bends, a lot of the blades were bent, eat up. Mega Meats, I think, are great on whitetails. You guys know I just used one when I shot that 10-point November 1st, but I think on in a marginal situation where you're shooting and you hit a little bit forward and you're getting that shoulder, you're really risking it with one of those Mega Meats that they're going to get caught up on some bone, not get you some good penetration. That's just my personal experience. The Rages got ate apart, okay? The Rages were all bent and twisted. They even had a big stack of Rages, Schwackers, and something else on top of the fridge that these guides that we had were just pulling out of these hogs, and they had a big pile up there of all the blades that were still stuck into the pigs, and a lot of them were Rages. So if I was to set up an arrow just for a pig, I knew I was going to go hunt a massive boar. This was kind of a trophy boar, and that's kind of what I was after. I'd do a heavy arrow, heavy front tip, and an iron will. Okay, most of the shots you're taking on these things are 15 yards, 20 yards. The farthest one I shot was 40, but that was just because I was having some fun. But in the testing range, what we got out of the fixed blades, okay, Slick Tricks, great. The VPAs, nice small broadhead, single bevel, those things, full pass-throughs every time. One of them I shot in the top of the neck, almost full pass-through out of the rear. Almost came all the way out, but those things were getting some great penetration. And obviously, I think the best out of all of them that we tested was the Quad Exodus. 3 guys were using these things. The blades were barely dented, full pass-throughs, sticking in the mud. The Quad Exodus is one of my favorite fixed blades you can get. I love the way it sits back on the arrow. Just a really nice, solid fixed blade. Another one that's new that I've been using this year a lot that did get some great pass-through, had a little bit of dings here and there, but this thing is just an absolute killer, is those Helixes. Those Helixes are probably one of my new favorite fixed blades of all times. I love the shape. They tune a little funny. They're a little touchy, but once you get them, man, those things get some great penetration. All of the fixed blades outperformed the mechanicals, just so we understand that. The Magnuses, those were great. Multiple Magnuses used, a couple slight bends to them, but for the most part, those things were full pass-throughs. The Montecs, you had a couple different guys using different Montecs. Just the cheap ones from Walmart, those things were outperforming the mechanicals. Muzzies, obviously, always those things get good penetration. And then the only thing that didn't, and this is from feedback from a couple different people, is the Annihilators. Those ones just didn't do well on pigs, especially in kind of like a bad play shot. So when it comes to pigs, obviously you don't want to go anywhere near that shoulder. I have seen a guy shoot an arrow and it almost bounce off a shoulder of a pig. Okay, it's as solid as you can get. Even behind the shoulder, there's a nice big plate on some of the bigger hogs that's not going to allow you to get some of that penetration. That's what I was talking about earlier, to kind of assimilate some of this big game animals. You really do want to shoot a kind of quartering away shot tucked right behind that last rib, getting up into the vitals. But having some fun out there. I was shooting them in the neck. I tried to shoot one between the eyes. We shot one over the back. I shot one, behind. I was flinging arrows at everything, trying to see what was going to work what. So in a nutshell, in the end, I think when applying to deer, and this is where this dog tracker guy comes in, is when hunting deer, a lot of us are going to go right behind the shoulder blade. Okay. For new guys, here's some good insight that I've accumulated over the last couple of years. If you're going to shoot right behind that shoulder blade and you make a marginal shot to the left, if you make a little bit of an off shot to the left, there's a good chance you're hitting that shoulder blade. I think if you hit a solid shoulder bone, he said you might only be recovering about 25%. Now, on the other spectrum, if you make a little bit of an off shot into the guts or the liver, he said it's almost a 98% recovery when using a dog. And that just kind of reassures me and my hunt on November 1st, my decision to back out of the woods, as hard as it was, get out of the tree, get back to my house, make sure the shot placement was where I thought it was. Once I realized it was in the guts, hold off for 24 hours, then go back in and you can find that deer. So again, I'm always going for the heart. I'm always tucking that shoulder. That's just me personally. But if you're new, I think your chances of recovery, shooting a more center mass shot a little bit farther away from the shoulder blade might be your best bet. If you're getting real close to that shoulder blade and you shoot a little bit forward, there's a good chance that you're not going to get that deer. Now, in regards to fixed blades and mechanicals for deer hunting, I think you're going to get a better pass through with the fixed blades. You're going to get a better chance of recovery if you do hit a shoulder with the fixed blades, but I think you're going to get a better blood trail with the mechanicals. And I think if you do make a marginal shot back, I think it doesn't matter mechanical or fixed blade, there's a good chance that you're going to recover that deer. But if you want a blood trail and you're not the best at tracking, I think a mechanical is the way to go. Okay, tracking, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of time in the field. There's a lot of different things that go into it, aspects that go into it that are learned over time with experience. And if it's not something that you have experience with, I think a mechanical is by far the way to go. You're going to get a lot more blood. Now, if you're somebody who's confident, sure, your shot placement, I think you have a better chance of killing the animal if you use a fixed blade. You're going to get most likely a full pass through. You make a bad shot, you're going to start punching through stuff. Even in the sense of what you might hit grass or a little limb before the shot, it's not going to get hung up like a mechanical. Fixed blades just punch through, and that's their job, is to kind of penetrate. So I think, depending on who you are, I've shot mechanicals my whole life. I've ventured more off into fixed blades lately, and I see the benefit of both. Right now, I got a little bit of both in my quiver. I mix it up and I shoot both all the time. Now, in regards to tracking, the guides, man, one of my favorite parts about this place was the guides. You had Billy and you had Dennis, and these guys were packed full of information. So if you go into one of these scenarios, there's obviously a lot you can learn if you're there for the right reasons. I learned a whole bunch about just the equipment I was using. I learned a whole bunch from this Josh guy I met, that's a dog tracker. I learned a whole bunch from the guides and just the process of tracking. And when you really see an experienced guide or tracker track, it's honestly impressive. They are picking up pinpoint blood drops, and they're humming through the woods. So many different things go into where, they're approaching these tracks and having successful tracks just because of their knowledge in the field. Then that's where I said earlier, if you don't have a ton of experience, you want a lot of blood. You want something to follow, because man, it's easy to get mixed up, turned around, things lost. And there was a couple times where even they got confused on the blood on the hogs that had just like a little bitty pinpoint blood. We got turned around a couple times, ended up finding, I think, almost all of the pigs except like one. But that was another part. Those guys are full of knowledge. I learned a ton from them as well. If you're interested in testing some stuff, getting some extra experience, hog hunting is one of the most fun things you could possibly do. The first night, a little bit chiller, shooting, hog standing still, eating over corn, really fun. Another thing about this that was super hard, I've never ever had such a hard time not shooting deer. There was deer everywhere, and they weren't afraid of us, so they're just standing there. There was a nice big 8-point at one point that I wanted to kill, and I just had to reserve myself because they were kind of off limits. But man, I had a hard time not shooting these deer. And just kind of waiting on the hogs. Second night, after we stirred everything up, I was down in this low, kind of low bottom, a lot of trails running through there. These hogs were flying through. I probably saw 100 hogs in one night. One of the coolest hunts I've ever had. There was hogs everywhere. I was flinging arrows left and right. But a really fun experience if you and your buddies want to get out and do something fun. Check out PJ Bow Hunting Adventures down in Texas. Keith, the owner, super cool guy. All the guides, awesome. His wife cooks the meals. Nice bunk bed setup. Real inexpensive but fun. Check it out. Hope you learned something from this video. We'll see you next time.